know the answers to some of those.
Have any students done this with you?
I've met with a lot of FIGs,
Oh, okay.
and they ask a lot of similar questions,
Yeah.
but these go a lot more into detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys, they're good questions.
I think every freak does that, like some sort of professor.
Meet with professors
Yeah,
and
mine
ask
did
them.
too.
Yeah, it's good to know that professors are normal
Because you
people.
can see those
Yeah.
questions.
We had Dr. Lottie and like.
But there's still shadows in their face, but you can't do anything about
So
that.
funny.
He has a lot of
I think it's fine.
stories.
Yeah.
Are you gonna ask questions too?
No, she wants to do it.
Okay. I think we're rolling.
Okay.
You ready?
Start?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, I'm happy to meet with you. Thank you
Guys.
for inviting me.
Thanks. Okay, so first off, we wanted to know a little bit about yourself. So can you tell us about any research that's going on with you or what you're currently working on?
So I currently do not do any research. I actually, my focus is just teaching right now. So I'm teaching classes.
Okay. And then what sort of contributions do you think you've made in the field of biology?
So in terms of furthering scientific knowledge, the only real research I have done that's furthered scientific knowledge was my PhD research, which was looking at how embryos develop. So I helped to look at how cells communicate during embryonic development.
Wow, that's very cool. So where did you do your PhD and like where did you go to grad school?
So I went to the University of Arizona, which is in Tucson, and I was in the molecular biology graduate program there.
Nice. Okay, so then how did you end up at UT Austin?
How did I end up at UT Austin? That is an interesting story that's not very interesting probably to you, but it's interesting when you think about planning your future. It had to do with with my personal life and the fact that my husband got a job here, and so I moved with him, and that's how we moved to Austin, which was one of our top choices of cities we wanted to live in. And then I got a job in the biology department. My husband also works in the biology department, so I also got a job teaching here.
Nice. So how long have you been teaching?
Oh, we were just trying to figure that out the other day. We think we've been in Austin for 10 years, and I started teaching right when we moved here.
Nice. And do you mainly do bio 311C?
I do Bio 311C, and I also teach some of the non-majors biology classes, which are basically Bio 311C, but not in as much detail. And then there's also some that focus on more physiology, so anatomy and physiology classes.
So still on the topic of teaching, in your Bio 11.3 classes, what's your favorite topic to teach?
That's a hard one. I usually say it's gene expression. I love teaching gene expression. I think it's a really logical process, and it's one that if you think about it, it just makes sense of how information is passed in such a really nice way. But more and more recently, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I really have been enjoying teaching energy transformation and thinking about how energy is passed as well. So I guess I really like talking about how energy and information is passed around the cell. But that's been a lot of fun for me recently, which is funny because that was my least favorite topic when I took this class as an undergraduate. Yeah. So.
Nice. So where did you go for undergrad?
For my undergraduate, I went to a teeny tiny school in Virginia, actually, the University of Richmond, which is in the capital of Virginia. It's a small, private, liberal arts school, so very different from the University of Texas.
Yeah.
We probably only had 1,000 students in our class.
That's awesome. So talking about like, I guess your background and everything, as a kid, were you always like interested and like knew you wanted to go into the biology field, or?
Not at all. I hate when students ask me about how I ended up teaching biology, getting a PhD in biology, because I don't have a good answer. It's really sad for me. I wish I had a better story. But my first year of college, I was undecided. My major, I was undecided. I had no clue what I wanted to do. As a student of liberal arts college, we were required to take classes in all sorts of different subjects, including science. And I loved my biology class. And so my second year, I took 2 biology classes, and I loved them. And then my third year, I took all biology classes. I think my school was so small, I think I ended up taking every biology class that was offered. So it was, I hate to say this, but it was sort of weeding out everything I didn't like and keeping everything I did like, and it just sort of kept going toward science, yeah.
So were you originally from Virginia and then just wanted to stay close to home?
No, I'm actually from New York originally. So
Okay.
I sort of have started on the East Coast, moved inward a little bit to Richmond, and then I moved all the way to Arizona, and now I'm starting my slow progression back to the East Coast. So.
Yeah. Do you foresee yourself like staying at UT teaching, or would you want to go and teach at a different college or anything?
I love UT. I'm very happy. I love Austin. There's so much to do, even when it's freezing cold out. I do want to move back to the East Coast though, because my whole family's there. And while when I was 18, I wanted to get as far away from my family as possible. Now we have kids. I miss my family a lot. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we're hoping in the near future to move back.
Nice. And then we're also wondering, this is a very broad question, you can kind of answer however you want, but how do you use your biology knowledge in your everyday life?
Oh, how do I use my biology knowledge in my everyday life? At the heart of it, as I talked about gene expression, I love science and I was drawn to science because it made sense to me and it's the way I think about the world in general as being very logical. So I think I use my biology knowledge and the way I think every day in regards to everything. But in terms of biology in general, what to eat. I was just talking to my students about high fructose corn syrup. Do you eat high fructose corn syrup, and why not? And so trying to use that information in making decisions about my daily life and which vitamins I need to get, which minerals, especially now that we have kids and trying to make good life decisions for them. But I also love, this is so embarrassing, we love using science examples when we teach our kids. I mean, my kids are still really young, but one time I was teaching them about how to pluralize words, right? So most words you just add an S. Sometimes you have to add an ES, except when you talk about a lot of other exceptions to that rule. And I can't think of an exception right now. I've got one that's going to come right off the top of my head. What were you going to say?
Goose and geese.
Goose and geese, yes. But in biology, there are just so many examples of really weird exceptions to pluralizations, and I'm still not coming up with one. Give me 1 second, I'll come up with a really good example. Antennae, add an E at the end. What else? I know there's mitochondria is plural, mitochondrion is singular, one that kills students, and they never understand, what's a mitochondrion? So we use a lot of biology examples all the time, and it's kind of sad. We had one day we were trying to think of like words that started with Q and trying to think of biology words that could start with the letter Q, and that was a really hard one. I don't think we actually came up with that. We're dorks.
Makes sense. Okay, so the last question we have is, could you give us some advice as undergrads who are interested in the biology field?
Just general advice.
Yeah.
I mean, I have, I think based on my life experiences, the number one piece of advice that I always give to undergrads of any major is get out of Texas. How many of you are from Texas? You're not from Texas. Where are you from?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm from Bermuda.
You're from Bermuda, so you got away from Bermuda. Good job. But so many of my students that I meet are from Texas, and they've never left Texas, and they want to go to medical school in Texas. And you asked me where I'm from and where I went to college or where I went to graduate school and where I am now. And I love that I've had the opportunity to live in lots of different cities and meet lots of different people. And I definitely recommend that if you're thinking of going to graduate school or medical school, it's a great time when you're going to be in school for 4 years or 6 years. It's a great set amount of time where you can go try and live somewhere else and experience life a little bit differently. But also, if you come in your first year, and I know most of you are not in your first year, but if you come in with a set expectation for yourself, I want to go to medical school or I want to go to graduate school, don't make sure that you're 100% attached to that, because part of college is exploration and figuring out what else is available and trying new things, and you should be willing to try new things. And if something doesn't work out, that's okay. You have opportunities to try other things in college.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm from Seattle, so
Are
it's
you?
totally
Good job.
different.
No,
than
I'm so glad.
Seattle.
Thank you. I've always wanted. I've never been to Seattle.
It's
more-
beautiful.
more
Well,
busy.
right now it's a little bit like cold.
Cold.
But
Well,
the
so
summer's
is here.
great.
So.
Yeah. Well, that's basically it, and we just wanted to thank you again so much
Oh,
for taking
thank
the time.
you. This was
Thank you.
fun.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah, I
so
hope
much.
I didn't do too bad of a job.
No, that was great. Thanks so much.
Could you ask your questions about the embryonic development, your research in embryonic development?
Sure.
Because our interview is supposed to be focused on like you, but also on biological, anything biological, and a lot of this was about teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. So the answer related back to the actual biology class.
Okay.
Okay.
So my graduate research was trying to understand the regulation involved in embryonic development, specifically in determining how the front of the embryo becomes different from the back of the embryo. And I studied snail development, and snails are a great example of early specification in development. So at the 4-cell stage, they have labeled and know from the 4-cell stage what every cell becomes in the animal. And the question is, how does that get set up at such an early stage? And it was previously thought that the cells inherit information that determines what they're going to be. And in my research, what I did was a lot of looking at interactions between the cells, and I actually went in and destroyed specific cells in the embryo and then looked to see how the other cells were affected by that. And I found that there was an important communication that went on early on in the development of the embryos at the 24-cell stage, which helped with the specification of the front of the embryo versus the back of the embryo.
And was this embryonic development in comparison with other humans, or within that same like phylum of like Nephoria, I believe, or like and other gastropods? Like, did you compare the different layers of germ in comparison to other gastropods?
So we were comparing it with other spiralians, other gastropods, as well as other organisms as well. But snails have a very different mechanism of early development than do vertebrates, for example, and humans. But a lot of the same signaling molecules are involved, and humans involve a lot of communication between cells. Spiralians and gastropods, for example, were thought to involve less communication between cells. It was thought to be more autonomous development, again, where the cells are inheriting signaling molecules or inheriting molecules that help with specification. So, so it was comparisons amongst all different organisms.
Great.
How does that tie? You said you liked gene expression as well. You focused on gene expression, is what you said?
Not in my research. I
But
did
not
not
in your
look at gene
research.
expression.
Okay.
No, I was looking at cell communication.
Well, thank you. Would you mind if we came into your class at some point in time, just to, like get some footage of you too, like teaching or?
No.
No,
Yes,
you don't mind?
I don't want to be videotaped while I'm
Okay,
teaching.
it's fine. Okay, thank you.
No, you're welcome to come to my class anytime you want, but I don't want to be videotaped while I'm teaching.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure, thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.